Welcome, Latinx Talk listeners and viewers. My name is Perla Guerrero. I'm Associate Professor of American Studies and U.S. Latinx Studies at the University of Maryland, College Park. And I'm really glad to be able to have this conversation with these two great mujeres who are co-directors from the Mexico City-based organization, Otros Dreams and Acción, which serves the deported and returned community. And my co-host here is...
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Vera Rosas, Associate Professor of Chicano Studies at California State University, Dominguez Hills.
And we are the co-editors for this, the special issue on Deportation and Coerced Return. This is a project that both of us have been working on in different ways for several years, and it's through our respective research and engagement that we met Otros Dreams and Acción, and Leni and Esme before they were co-directors. So we're going to ask them to tell us a little bit about the organization and then to tell us a little bit about the factors, some of the factors that lead to coerced return and deportation.
Hi everyone, my name is Esmeralda Flores, and previously I have collaborated with OLA since 2018. We have a lot to tell about what affects the coerced return or the deportation for the communities. We're trying to be very concrete. So let's just say that for the deportation, it's very important for us to state that it doesn't necessarily have to do with you having any kind of involvement with the criminal system. You know, you could just literally be living your life, and then an ICE agent gets you, you know, like it doesn't necessarily have to do anything with the criminal system. It's just the way the immigration system is built, that anybody can report you, you know, if there's any problems with your work or employer, that could be a cause for deportation, you know. So it doesn't at all have to do necessarily with the criminal system. But also in the same breath, let me say that even if it does, we really need to take into account the school to prison pipeline and the criminalization of brown and Black bodies, you know. So either way, you know, whether you had some criminal conflicts or not, you can end up deported. A figure also called voluntary departure, which is just like a de facto deportation, because yes, they don't escort you over the border, but they give you a due date of this is the time you have to leave the country. And you already signed that you basically deported yourself. As far as the factors that coerce people to return is, of course, immediately off the top of my head, the fact that a family member is deported, right? So whether you had any conflict with the criminal system or not, in the end, your family also gets affected by the deportation. And here we're talking about kids that are American nationals that end up in a country where they are not officially or immediately recognized as citizens, but that have to choose, you know, basically between citizenship and family bonds. So I don't know how you say it in English, no, but in no respect is the interés superior del niño, y la niña y la niñez ever taken into account whenever a family deportation or a deportation of family members being taken or done, being executed. That's a better word. And so that's why people are coerced to return. But then we also have the factors that are structural and systematic, you know, like the lack of access to jobs, the lack of access to education, the constant racial discrimination being faced that affects in job, housing, and health, and every other aspect. And we can also shortly mention the mental health factor. For example, we had a lot of cases of DACA recipients who literally came back because Trump was too much. The uncertainty of DACA ending tomorrow, of what would happen to them with the U.S. government having all their information, was just too much. And coming back to an unknown, to a place where you're basically exiled, where your family's not here, somehow seemed at least more constant than this forever going, never ending worriness of what if Trump gets reelected, and that's only some of the factors I would like to open way for Leni to also contribute.
Pero ODA en sí as an organization, I've been reflecting on it, and even continuing my participation and now as co-director as well, that ODA has been the response to something that I thought was impossible when I came back. It is something tangible that we are seeing, and it is something that has been approached in a holistic way to be able to accompany our community and for it to be something that we wished we would have had when we came back. So ODA, as Perla mentioned, is a grassroots organization by and for those of us that have been affected by deportation and forced return or coerced return as well. And we do this through, first of all, that immediate accompaniment, that first step of either you are in a detention center in the United States and you have gotten in contact with ODA through a family member or someone you're contemplating, and you are now also talking with us, as Ms. was sharing with DACA recipients. So justo in visualizing esos community needs, we see what are the first immediate ones. It is identity documents. It's being able to see, can I access education here? What is up with the system? It's a whole other thing. Over there, it's the IRS. Over here, it's the SAT. They're all both complicated. So it's all of those bureaucratic processes of navigating in a country that you're coming back after 10, 20, 30 plus years, no? And many times enough, ironically enough, our community arrives undocumented, no? So that's also part of the start of the struggles, even before coming, that our community of somebody being undocumented and that transition now to a forced returnee or a deportee is those steps to contemplate, no? So after you've been able to cover these basic needs, no, you have this gap in your heart. You're going through family reunification, no, you're going through the culture shock. So then now we also have this space called Pocha House, and Pocha House seeks to be a safe space, seeks to be a brave space for our community, seeks to be a space where somebody can come and once again, like I mentioned, see that it's real, no? That they aren't the only one, that yes, we are actually nerds, no? And that's unfortunate, but at the same time, I think speaking on me, that brought some sort of comfort in the sense of like, where are we, you know? So that's what the space offers. It offers a calm space in the midst of this monstrous jungle concrete city. As Esme was sharing, I think a lot of what she was sharing goes back and echoes to these IRA laws and all of the infrastructure that was created precisely to be able to penalize or to be able to criminalize minor offenses like driving without a license. No, that in the case of my family, that was one of the biggest factors that coerced us to have to come back, because that led to my dad having to go to county jail and possibly being deported. No, it was that emotion, as also Esme was sharing, of that constant anxiety and stuff.
Thank you. That's really helpful. You mentioned this a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit about the differences that deportees and returnees experience in Mexico? Because I think a lot of folks think, well, they're both Mexican citizens. They're both going back to their country of birth, right? So, and yet from having spoken with you all, over a period of several years, we know that that's not the case, right? There are some real structural and maybe societal barriers. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes, I would love to. So let's start talking about the myths. Leni already mentioned the biggest one, which is, okay, well, your problem was that you were undocumented in the States, but now you're back in Mexico, which is your country of birth. You're no longer undocumented. Problems be gone. lies. Because what happens is that we unfortunately become undocumented in Mexico too, and that is due to Mexico being a country that has historically expelled Mexicans, right? And has created no system for us to return to, right? It's like the government didn't expect it. The government doesn't make any efforts to like bring us back or give us any kind of comfort when we're back. Why do we say we're undocumented in Mexico? We can say it, a lot of things about the different documents, about how hard it is to get a birth certificate, about how hard it might be to get your CURP, and whatever. But the thing is that the universal identity document is the voter's ID, known as INE. And even though it isn't legally recognized as the universal ID, it is factually so, right? So the problem with having a political electoral instrument function as an identity document is that it was not created to protect your right to an identity. It was created to let you vote. So like if you don't have a house or a domicile, you can't get an INE. If you don't have your birth certificate, you can't get an INE, right? If you have no other proof of picture ID, you can't get an INE. And it's like this a never-ending cycle, because how am I going to get a picture ID if I don't have a picture ID, right? And people are like, oh, but what about the matrícula consular and the pasaporte that was given by the consulate and the INE given in the consulate? No, it doesn't work, right?
I was
Right?
going to
And
say, just to clarify,
yeah.
the Mexican government in Mexico says that the matrícula consular and the passport issued in the United States to Mexican nationals is not recognized in the country of Mexico, right? This is not
That's
something that
absolutely
people do
right.
wrong. It's that the Mexican government is not holding up their sort of
And-
responsibilities.
Yeah, like because people are like, well, maybe you should have had your passport at the consulate, right? Like, what's the point? They won't take it because the address doesn't have an address in Mexico.
And how
Yeah.
we've interpreted even the act of a deportation, no? That it's a kidnapping from a nation state. It's a kidnapping from a nation state. We are an organization that is led by women, even though the majority of deportees are men. That is something that we have seen, and it's not, and it's interesting, and I do think it stems precisely how we're able to kind of, if we want, and not that much, but go under the radar versus maybe a community member that is coming with three dots on the side of his eye, no? And as well, at this moment, in this moment, talking with fellow community members that do have these tattoos and stuff right now, with the rise of organized crime and stuff, they have been a target, and this is a reality that we know happens to our community. So once somebody is deported in a fronteriza border, many times they can be hit up by organized crime, no? I say invited in the best way, but I think we all know, invited to join, or as well even kidnapped. And that is the experience of many folks that do arrive to the border. And we also have to remember that they can be dropped off at 1, 3 a.m., no? That this was something that was pushed back at a certain time. But we know that the US government, and even adding on to that, the Mexican government, are never looking out for us, but are always trying to justo coerce us to not try to go back and stuff. So I would imagine that from like that first step over, no? And then as a returnee, in my case, I came back as a 16-year-old, but then my mom came back, yeah, as like a 30-something-year-old, no? So also the experiences were very different. In my case, I felt that basically I was asked to stop talking. That is something that we confronted, like don't talk. And even though it was a coerced return because of the situation that was going on with my family, they tried to present it in a way that we were going to finally, they were going to stop working so much. We were going to finally have our house. They were going to spend time with us. We were going to have fun. We were going to be able to take karate classes. They were going to be able to afford all that. And you come back, and from day one, them telling you to not speak in Spanish, because then they'll know there's something off. I don't know if I think that's part of the side that we're coming into now and the context that we're coming into. And as you were, and as well as a woman coming into the country as a 16-year-old teenager that was coming into the country, to be able to understand as well some of the social norms and stuff was also part of that culture shock and part of the things that are part of the reality, other than the institutional ones like being denied education, because that was also a reality for me, like many other community members, and many other hurdles that we confront along the way.
Thank you, Leni. There's this kind of silencing, right? Like that sort of embodies shame, right? That I think it's based on the ideas that we have in terms of what kind of immigrants we should be, right? Because if you deviate from that idealized notion of what a good immigrant is, then you're automatically, like not good or not good enough, right? So you left everything and then you come back with nothing, right? Right. So there's this like shame that I think it's
I respond to that because it was an emotion that I felt when I came back as a 16-year-old girl. So at 16, I learned that I was undocumented. I had no prior knowledge of my status. So my mom did a really good job of protecting us in that way. But that shame was carried over here, precisely. And the shame broadened and grew because when we came back, there was no money in the bank that my parents had sent over. That money was the family had eaten it, no? The house or the land that they thought we were going to build our house in, it was actually pawned, like et cetera, no. And even hearing like my uncle, whose house is like 3 stories, but with like a Mexican teacher salary, who was the one that actually was managing my mom's finances for building and stuff. He actually told her, because he's the older brother, she's the little sister, that you went to go waste your time in the United States. That you wasted basically 14 plus years of your life over there and you have nothing to show for it.
If most of the returnees and deportees that get help are men, the leadership roles are held by women. And I think that one way that deported and returned women specifically have found to resist is precisely through organizing. I think that, or what we have seen with the Comité de Mujeres, and even now when we meet a new returnee or a new deportee woman, right, is that we have already individually walked our walk in community organizing through our own cases or through organizing in different spaces like feminism, defensa de la tierra, derechos de las comunidades indígenas. When I got to college, right? First, I did human rights in general, and then feminist and women's rights, right? And then LGBT rights. And then así hasta que un día I walked into a forum and there was Heman, there was Maggie, and then I was like, I didn't even know this existed, right? But we had already walked the walk, no? The same con Caro, the same with Yari, right? That the reason, for example, that we met Yari was because in 2018 we set up the first colectivo to go to the 8M march, right? And we were chanting in Spanglish, and then she was already there, not knowing anybody. She decided to go for herself because that's what moved her. And then we found each other, kind of like, las luchas se entretejen, and that's how women come to Oda.
I love that because it sort of goes back to something that Gretel and Leni already talked about, which is like the shame that either your family places on you or Mexico, the receiving community places on you. So like part of the way you've been able to find each other is like when you break the silencio and you do speak Spanish or you speak Spanglish, and other folks like hear that and see you and can identify with you, right? And in ways that it is really powerful. I
Mm.
also want to add here that the law you mentioned, 286, through sort of coalition building, right, and organizing with other organizations, all that helped to push for the change in legislation, which required the apostille for education related diplomas, right? So that's a really big deal. Because so many returnees and deportees, like that was the first, I mean, amongst the first hurdles if they wanted to study, is that if they cannot go back, if all of your family returned and there's nobody to go to your home, to your like high school county to get your high school diploma, then you were already out of luck, right? In terms of trying to do that. So in terms of like organizing, right, it also seems that it's through coalition building with these other organizations that serve migrants or, you know, other folks.
Right now, you were mentioning about education, and you would think, okay, check, no? One of the things in our demands that we were able to obtain. And yes, we've been able to advance in that, but then where does ODA keep on coming in for this function, no? Is that when somebody comes back to Mexico, has their high school diploma, if they were able to come back with the paper in hand, they go to the local high school and, well, they don't know how to do the process. Or they say we still require an apostille, no? So it's also understanding how we're navigating in a bureaucratic country that hasn't even like merged its database with the passports of its Mexican citizens, expedited in el extranjero, wherever it may be, and Mexico, no? So we're dealing with a government that has no connection within its different institutions, no? So many of those things that sometimes we're able to advance gets lost in translation. That's where ODA has to keep on insisting for those rights to be respected. ODA doesn't just exist for those of us that live the direct experience, but also the effects of it are seen in our families and stuff as part of mixed status families, no? So I just wanted to emphasize that. And for folks in the United States, that we are still on the side of the border as well, fighting for rights here as well to be respected. And that has also taken into consideration like gender perspectives and stuff like that. What happens when the dad is not there, or maybe there's like gender violence, et cetera, no? And that takes me precisely to the audience that is on the other side of the border from us, that there is this whole generation as well of US citizen kids and families that are being raised without maybe one parent or both. In the case, and once again as well, sharing part of my story, like my siblings had to go back as teenagers. Know what's going on. My brother says that till his senior year, his guidance counselor actually knew he was living like by himself. So these are the experiences that are also going on the other side, and I just place that as well within the intersectionalities and everything that this contains, how we are affected and how we are I don't know how what roles, what after effects, what I think of it in Spanish, como nos salpica these broken immigration laws when you're not even an undocumented immigrant.
Yeah. I think that just to give credit to all the work that you do, I think that yes, you're organizing, you know, it's transnational in the sense that it's US and Mexico, but I think that it's like beyond that, right? Because you also work with Central American migrants, with people from South America. And I mean, the scope of the organizing that you do is really like global, right? Also kind of demystifying this idea that the US is like the only place where immigration exists, right? Full of immigrants, right? That Mexico has always been a country of immigrants, but today it's even more so, right? And that, you know, it's like return, deportation, crossing, staying, right? That sort of like expansive way of organizing, I think that it's also kind of center stage to all that I think it's very important to recognize and to talk about, right? Because people have all these misconceptions, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why for members of ODA is very like self-representation. It's very important, right? Like the capacity, the ability to tell your own stories and demystifying all these ideas that people have about deportation and coerced return.
like going back to like the myths about our community and like why people don't like us, like socially, not only that the government ignores us and like tries to act like we don't exist, right? But like socially, it's like, well, es que you're asking for all of this, not even I have that. And I'm like, and you don't see the problem? Like, you don't see the problem with you not having that either, you know? And like the wording that Oda uses, like that it's not reintegration because you cannot be reintegrated to a country that where like I think it's a bit lower than 50%, but it's like more than 40% of the population lives under poverty. Like, how are you gonna reintegrate people to that? Right? And so the fight for human rights, yes, it's targeted and centering the community of returnees and deportees because that's what we do, right? We can't fight all fights, but we can fight fights that benefit more than just our community. And for example, the Cambio to the Acuerdo 286, any foreigner or immigrant or any person, you know, privileged or not, that did their high school elsewhere now doesn't have to present an apostille, right? Same thing like with the fight for access to health without having an ID, you know? Same thing for, this is more of a fight that has been headed more like by CAFAMIN and other sister organizations, you know? But the fact that they don't, that it's illegal for them to require a CURP for your child to enter school, which benefits U.S. kids that come with their parents so that they can enter school, whether they have their double nationality or not, means that Central American or immigrants in general that do not have documents can also have access to basic education, which means, you know, elementary and middle school, without having a court, without having to prove anything. And they have to take them and they have to provide a provisional court.
I want to add on to that real quick and even share the experience. If I'm not incorrect, it was Baruch who went down to Chiapas and was in a space with other communities, and the majority were communities in transit, refugees, et cetera, and there he found out they recognized the name of Oda. And one of the moms mentioned, like, thanks to your guys' community's effort, like my kid, they were coming from El Salvador, is now going to be able to enter school in Chiapas, no? So as you mentioned, Gre, yes, like that advocating for others. But I think, and I've learned it a lot, it's deliberation for all. We invite other people from different movements to share with us what's going on and how it intersectionalizes. Because I think we see it justo as this interweaved thing, no? We're not wanting to fight between ourselves, no? Sino let's look to where is the origin, what are the roots. No, we need a dignified life. We want to flourish, and we all want to flourish.
Thank you all for joining us. It's been really great to have this conversation, and we'll see you again soon, I hope.
Hopefully.